Fight Voter Fraud Incorporated works tirelessly to promote transparency and accountability in the electoral process, advocating for measures that prevent fraudulent voting and protect our representative republic and the rights of citizens. Linda Szynkowicz and her band of nonpartisans are committed to upholding the integrity of U.S. elections and are currently investigating over 280,000 cases of suspected voter fraud. How can you help to ensure we have one vote for one legal voter? Here's Linda.
Hi, and welcome to SYNC-O-WICZ. My name is Linda Szynkowicz. I'm the founder and CEO of Fight Voter Fraud. And our whole thing with our programs is that we only want one vote for one legal voter. And I want to welcome everybody who is watching this. We are doing our best each week to make changes and include as many different states and other information that is going on that concerns your vote. So this morning, we are going to start with Alaska. Not because in alphabetical order, it's one of the first ones in there. But Alaska has a few things going on that I hadn't actually realized. So first, they have the Senate Bill number 64. Now, Senate Bill number 64 was was supposedly being put into place for the following reasons. Under SB 64, the Division of Elections would send a notice to confirm the address if the voter has registered to vote in another state, received a driver's license in another state, registered a vehicle in another state, served on a jury in another state, obtained a resident hunting or fishing license in another state, pays resident tuition at a university in another state, receives residential property tax exemption in another state, or receives public assistance in another state. Now, we all know that we are supposed to be residents of the state that we live in order to vote. And with this particular bill that the Senate was pushing forward, they wanted to make sure everything was covered. So it started off as a Democratic bill, but then the Republicans and the independents got involved in it as well. So what has happened since this bill was being pushed forward is that it's dead in the water. This particular bill is not going anywhere this session because there were so many additions that were put on it, and their legislative session actually ends on Wednesday, the 21st. So a number of the legislators were just like, we'd have to pour all our resources into focusing on one bill that needed adjustments made to it. So it's not going to happen. So one of the things with Alaska, which has also happened in other states, but Alaska, according to Senator Bill, I am going to mess up his last name. I'll tell you, it's Wylachowski. It's like this long. His name is this long. And he says one of the problems is the fact that they have 106% more registered voters than they have citizens in Alaska. Would you consider that a problem? I do. I do. I know in Connecticut, I believe it was 116% of the registered voters, the same type of stuff that was going on with this, that we had gotten documentation on, showed in Connecticut that we had a really high number as well, that the registered voters had voted. That was from 2016. And it was from Judicial Watch. They had done a study. And then Dominic Rapini, who used to be my board chair, he actually reproduced the numbers as well. And he came out with the same numbers they had done. And that was back in 2016 or 2018. So 106%, even though it's unusual, it happens because the voter rolls aren't clean. Now, another thing with Alaska that someone had told me about from Alaska is that everyone who is a resident of Alaska gets some residual money from the oil that's sold. So that's where a lot of people have decided that, well, even if I'm not in Alaska anymore, I want to sort of still keep getting the money. So they have a huge huge problem there. But I guess with this particular bill that's now dead in the water, they have a committee that is looking at, I believe, a few of the bills, but it's still not going to be done in time for 2026 is what they had wanted to do. So Alaska has some issues, and the Republicans opposed the bill because they said there was a lot more that needed to be done. So Alaska, you're making a valiant effort, but it's not going to happen this session, which is a lot of things. You got to question our legislators when they go into session. It seems they're sort of lackadaisical in the beginning. And then all of a sudden, when it's getting down to the wire, everybody is there and they got all kinds of meetings, etc. I believe the statistics in Texas is that 87% of the bills don't pass. And they're only in session for 5 months every 2 years. In order for them to get other stuff passed that really needs to get passed, they would have to go into an additional session in order to get it done. So let's move on to our next state. Our next state that we're going to be talking about is Hawaii. Now, Ralph Kushney, he's one of the election commissioners. We had contact with him a number of months ago, and we were doing what we could to help him out. And he was questioning what was going on in Hawaii and some documents that they really needed to see. If I remember correctly, there was something like 75,000 absentee ballots that just showed up, not even showing where they were from. And that's not a good thing to happen. When you have a state that only has a little over 800,000 voters, that close to 10% you're saying is in question. Now, another thing I wanted to remind listeners to this is that Hawaii is one of the 3 states that does not have a Secretary of State. They use the lieutenant governor. But the lieutenant governor a few years ago created the position for an election official that actually handles everything. So that's who all of this stuff goes for. Now, I am so proud of Ralph. He is pushing the legal matters forward in Hawaii, and he's doing it pro se. For those of you who don't know what pro se, it means he's doing it without an attorney, which is not always the easiest thing to do. But his case, Kushney versus Nago, that's case number 5, CCV 25041. Judge Randall Valenciano is going to be the judge presiding, and this is 39070 Ka'ai Street in Liihu, Hawaii. What's at stake? Commissioner Ralph Kushney is asking the court to determine whether the county clerk and the chief election officer are legally obligated to maintain a complete and current count of ballots as required by law. The case targets accountability in ballot handling and election transparency. Now, mind you, this is an election official who's had to do this because obviously there's a bunch of issues and they are not letting the public or even an election commissioner see stuff to do with voting that should be available to the public. So that's going to be Thursday, May 22nd, 2025 at 1 p.m. So any of you that are in Hawaii and you have time, please show up in the court. He has another hearing on May 29th at 9 a.m. and it's Coterie versus Green. Gary Coterie has filed a writ of quo warrantanto demanding the court determine under what legal authority Governor Josh and Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke assumed office. The claim, they were inaugurated before the election was certified, a direct challenge to lawful succession. This is really important. You actually have to certify the election before the officials are sworn in. So they were sworn in when the election wasn't certified. Now, on a side note, here in Connecticut, we found that in December of 2024, that not all the votes were tallied with the Secretary of State's office. As a matter of fact, they were missing almost 26%. Yet the state of Connecticut certified the numbers, which had to be certified by December 11th and in Congress's hands by December 17th. So this is along the same lines of the certification process on what goes on. I don't know why people just think they can just ignore the law. Well, because they can get away with it, is what they've been doing. But again, kudos to Ralph Kushney and any of you in Hawaii. Please, if you have an opportunity, show up in court. They could use the support. You want your vote to count, and you want to make sure the process is being done correctly, which in a number of states, it's not. So our next state has to do with Indiana. Indiana, the feds have decided that they are no longer going to be holding immigration ceremonies outside of the federal buildings. They've decided that they want to do it in-house because it's more cost effective. Now, I think I talked about this before, that if there's a ceremony that you want to go and see in your lifetime, go and see the swearing in of U.S. citizens. It is unbelievable. I mean, you'll have tears in your eyes on how happy these people are that are now becoming U.S. citizens. So, according to the, the United States, let's see how I can, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is the USCIS. All these acronyms. We got acronyms all over the place. So, like I said, they're saying that, we'll still hold ceremonies twice a month, but we're going to hold them in the federal buildings, in the courts that we want them done. Now, one of the things that you may not realize in Indiana is that the League of Women Voters shows up at these events. So they capture the new U.S. citizens right at the events. And a lot of these were outside events. They were at the library and other locations. So the League of Women Voters would set up their tables. And as soon as you became a U.S. citizen, they would talk you into registering to vote, which, don't get me wrong, I think it's a great thing to be able to register people to vote. But it sort of needs to be done in a nonpartisan way. And I sort of think taking advantage of someone who just became a U.S. citizen, that is celebrating the fact that they become a U.S. citizen, give them time to decide what party they want to be with. Let them look into it. They know they want to vote. They're going to register to vote. They just got their documents saying that they're a U.S. citizen. So we have Barbara Tully is among the small group of dedicated League of Women Voters in Indianapolis chapter. And she said, they're really upset because their volunteers last year registered 2,500 new U.S. citizens on the day they became U.S. citizens. And they've already done 900 so far. So I say, give them a break. We want everybody to register to vote that is capable of voting. But I really don't think the moment they become U.S. citizens, they should have a paper put in front of them and make their decision on what party they want to be with. Just my opinion. Sometimes, believe it or not, I do have opinions of different things that I see. So another segment that we have put in here is now our trivia question. So in what year was Election Day established? We should have a little clock. Ding, 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 ding. To decide again, in what year was Election Day established? Okay, here comes the answer. Election Day was established by Congress in 1845. So if any of you had guessed that, 1845, you were correct. So it was Congress that had made that decision. All right, we're going to go on to our next state, and our next state is Wyoming. Wyoming is an absolutely beautiful state. If you ever have the opportunity, you definitely should check it out. And yes, people do, they go around in cowboy hats. They really do. So anyway, in Wyoming, the Secretary of State, Chuck Gray, had testified for 22 election-related bills. That's a lot of bills that he wanted supported. And out of those 22 bills, how many are moving forward? None. They didn't make it in time. Again, how can you not make it in time? What they have is they do have a committee that's going to spend the next few months looking at 10 of the bills. They're going to look at 10 of the bills and decide which ones they can push forward for 2026. Now, again, were they in Congress or in the state legislature actually working every day of the week for the past number of months? Or was it again the lackadaisical, we'll take our time and everybody at the end, you got to rush, rush, rush. I mean, it's crazy. It's really crazy on all the stuff that we want to have come forward, especially for election integrity. That doesn't. So Wyoming, I guess you're going to have to wait. And some of the things that were in the bills that Secretary of State Gray had testified in favor of was the use of pen and paper ballots as the default in Wyoming elections, prohibiting ballot drop box. All of you know what I feel about that. Put it in a mailbox. We don't need these drop boxes, especially when the drop boxes are right in front of City Hall. Walk the other steps into the building and bring it to your election office. But anyway, another one was restricting who can deliver a person's ballot to the clerk on behalf of the person. That's where some of the fraud happens. Ballots are being delivered, but it's not from the person who actually filled out the ballot. You don't know. There's ballot harvesters out there. Your name may have been used without you knowing it. So, I mean, again, that's an excellent piece of legislation that should go through. And requiring random hand count audits on elections. That was one of the things in one of their bills, of the 22 bills that didn't move forward. I think everybody should have that. We can't rely on all the machines all the time because there's all different ways that things can be manipulated. So we have a few of the states that their bills didn't go anywhere. Others, like I said, this is what we're here for, is to give you information on different bills and what is going on. So now another part of what we have is what we call vote notes. Vote notes is our segment where we highlight a particular topic to do with elections. And then you are going to be able to go to our website to see the rest of the information. And this week's vote notes is on Fani Matravati, who testified on May 13th of 2025 on a bill that was House Bill 4356. Now, I know Fani, and he is also going to be coming on our program, our new hour show, starting in June. So he's going to be on our program with our first hour program. And that's June 3rd is when we're going to be taping that episode. So he testified for with a bill that provides a procedure to remove certain electors listed on the qualified voter file who have not recently voted. Great idea. He talks about all the different issues that had gone on that he uncovered. Now, mind you, he also is the one who has the checkmyvote.org. So you might want to check that out. no pun intended, go to checkmyvote.org. And he has Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee already up on his website. Another website that you can go and check also is voteref.com. They have 36 states up. Bonnie has a number of different things that he does with his particular website. So you need to check it out if you live in Michigan, in Ohio, or Tennessee. And he's going to be adding other states as well. Well, one of the things that was found was that there was somebody who registered to vote in 2020. He registered on October 6th, actually of 2008, excuse me. But the problem is he was born in 1850. So this gentleman registered to vote 158 years after he was born. And then lo and behold, he voted on November 3rd in 2020. 170 years old. Now, Patrick Kolbeck is one of his friends, and I had seen on LinkedIn that he had put this information up there. And I'll tell you, I mean, Patrick's information that he puts up, he's worth checking out. And I guess he is also a friend of Fani's who is referring to his testimony as well. And Michigan's election system under Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, doesn't care about the glitches that are in the system. I think that's a bit of a problem. When you have a Secretary of State that doesn't care about the issues, wait a minute, I live in Connecticut. We see it every single day, the stuff that's not being done. But Fani did a fantastic job in pointing out all the glitches and information that he found that should be addressed in cleaning the voter rolls. And that's all we want. Like us, we just want one vote for one legal voter, as all of you should as well. So check out our website, fightvoterfraud.org, and that will connect you to Fani's segment here on Vote Notes. And I want to thank everybody so much for watching this program. If you have any questions, you can send us an email at info@fightvoterfraud.org. That's .org. And we're always looking for ideas and suggestions. And you're going to see how we're transforming our program, because this is episode number 8. We're learning as we move along with all of this. And I want to thank several people who make this show possible. One is Olivia. Olivia Giamanco is our producer. Tim Harriman, he is my technical director. And OBBM Network. OBBM Network, they do the executive direction, and distribution is provided by OBBM Network TV. So sign up. You can sign up for free on OBBM, and please share. We'd like to get as much information out there as possible. So once again, thank you for watching SYNC-O-WICZ. I'm Linda Szynkowicz, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.